Welcome to Mythical Nights, the podcast that takes you on a serene journey through the enchanting world of Greek mythology. Tonight we'll dive into a story filled with gods, heroes, and timeless lessons. So snuggle into your blankets, close your eyes, and let the tales of ancient Greece lull you into a peaceful slumber. Odysseus's journey home. Our story begins in the aftermath of the Trojan War, where the mighty Greek hero Odysseus, king of Ithaca, longs to return home to his beloved wife Penelope and his son Telemachus. The gods, however, had other plans, and his journey home would become a decade-long odyssey filled with trials and tribulations. Odysseus set sail with his loyal crew, but their journey was soon met with adversity. They first encountered the land of Cecones, where they triumphantly ransacked the city, but were quickly driven off by a fierce counterattack. As they sailed away, they were caught in a monstrous storm sent by Zeus, and drifted off course to the land of the Lotus Eaters. As Odysseus and his men made landfall on the island of the Lotus Eaters, they were initially relieved to find a hospitable people, offering them food and much-needed rest for their tired bones. Odysseus sent a small party of men to explore the island and meet the locals. His men were warmly welcomed and offered the sweet, intoxicating lotus fruit. Unaware of its effects, they graciously accepted and ate the fruit. The moment the lotus passed their lips, the men felt a wave of blissful forgetfulness wash over them. They no longer yearned for home or remembered the perilous journey they were on. Instead, they sank into a dreamy contentment, their thoughts consumed by the desire to remain in this pleasant stupor forever. Hours passed by, and Odysseus grew concerned when his men did not return. He decided to search for them himself, and soon he found them among the Lotus Eaters, their eyes glazed and vacant, their minds lost to the lure of the lotus. Realizing the danger, Odysseus urgently tried to rouse his men, shaking them and calling their names, but they only muttered in response, their thoughts too clouded to understand. With no other choice, Odysseus grabbed his men one by one and dragged them back to the ship. They protested weakly, their limbs heavy and uncooperative, but Odysseus' determination was unyielding. He heaved them onto the deck, their bodies limp, with a desire to return to the lotus. Acting swiftly, Odysseus bound their wrists and ankles with rope, securing them to the benches of the ship. The men struggled feebly against their bonds, their eyes still longing for the island's shores, but Odysseus ignored their pleas. With his men safely tied and unable to escape, Odysseus ordered the remaining crew to set sail immediately. The ship pulled away from the island, the land of the Lotus Eaters, fading into the distance. As the effects of the lotus gradually wore off, the bound men began to regain their senses, their memories of home and the journey ahead returning. As the winds carried Odysseus and his crew across the wine-dark sea, they eventually sighted the towering cliffs and rugged shores of an island unlike any they had encountered before. This was the island of the Cyclopes, a place shrouded in mystery and foreboding. Driven by curiosity and the need for fresh provisions, Odysseus decided to lead an expedition ashore. With a few chosen men, Odysseus disembarked and made his way inland. The landscape was wild and untamed, with rolling hills and fertile valleys rich in untended vegetation. They marveled at the untamed beauty and abundance of nature. but there was an eerie stillness to the land that set them on edge. As they ventured deeper, they came upon a large cave at the base of a hill. Its entrance was framed by a thick grove of laurel trees, and before it lay a wide, well-trodden path. The cave appeared to be the dwelling of a shepherd, for outside were pens filled with bleating sheep and goats. Odysseus, ever the strategist, instructed his men to hide their ship in a nearby cove and arm themselves, while he and a small party entered the cave to investigate. Inside the cavern was vast and shadowy, filled with the musky scent of animals and the earthy aroma of stored provisions. The walls were lined with shelves holding great pails of milk, curds, and racks of cheese. At the far end of the cave, a giant's bed lay in disarray, its massive proportions hinting at the size of its owner. Odysseus and his men busied themselves with examining the provisions, marveling at the bounty, when suddenly the ground trembled with heavy footsteps. They turned to see a hulking figure darken the cave's entrance, a single glaring eye set in the middle of its forehead. This was Polyphemus, the Cyclops, a monstrous being of immense strength and savage disposition. Polyphemus drove his flock into the cave and sealed the entrance with a colossal boulder, trapping Odysseus and his men inside. The Cyclops, oblivious to his uninvited guests, set about his evening chores, milking his ewes and arranging his cheeses. Only then did he notice the men huddled in the shadows. With a roar, Polyphemus demanded to know who they were and what had brought them to his lair. Odysseus, ever quick-witted, spun a tale of shipwreck and desperation, hoping to elicit the Cyclops' mercy. But Polyphemus was unmoved. With terrifying speed, he snatched up 2 of Odysseus' men and devoured them whole, bones and all, as the others watched in horror. With a roar, Polyphemus demanded to know who they were and what had brought them to his lair. Odysseus, ever quick-witted, spun a tale of shipwreck and desperation, hoping to elicit the Cyclops' mercy. But Polyphemus was unmoved. With terrifying speed, he snatched up 2 of Odysseus' men and devoured them whole, bones and all, as the others watched in horror. Odysseus realized that direct confrontation would be futile against such a formidable foe. He calmed his men, urging them to bide their time and wait for an opportunity to escape. Over the next day, they witnessed more of Polyphemus' barbaric habits, and their hatred for the Cyclops grew. Then one evening, as Polyphemus sat down to his grotesque meal, Odysseus offered him a gift of potent wine they had brought from their ship. The Cyclops, unaccustomed to such strong drink, eagerly accepted and drained the bowl. Pleased with the taste, he demanded more and soon fell into a drunken stupor. Before he succumbed to sleep, Polyphemus asked Odysseus his name. "Nobody," Odysseus replied cunningly. "My name is Nobody." Polyphemus laughed foolishly, promising to eat Nobody last as a gesture of thanks for the wine. With that, he collapsed into a deep slumber, his snores echoing through the cave. Seizing the moment, Odysseus and his men heated a sharpened stake in the fire and, with a combined effort, drove it into the Cyclops' single eye, blinding him. Polyphemus awoke with a blood-curdling scream, thrashing about in agony. He groped for his attackers, but found only empty air.
"Nobody is hurting me,"
he bellowed to his fellow Cyclopses, who heard his cries gathered outside the cave. Misled by his words, they dismissed his plight and left him to his suffering. The next morning, Odysseus and his men clung to the undersides of the sheep as Polyphemus, blind and raging, let his flock out to graze. Feeling the backs of each animal, the Cyclops unknowingly allowed his captives to escape. Once free, they sprinted to their hidden ship and set sail immediately, the curses of the blinded Polyphemus ringing in their ears. As they rowed away, Odysseus, in a final act of defiance, revealed his true name to the Cyclops, a boast that would later bring the wrath of Poseidon upon them. Thus, Odysseus and his men narrowly escaped the clutches of the Cyclops, their hearts heavy with the loss of their comrades, but steeled by their continued survival. The journey ahead remained perilous, but Odysseus's cunning and resilience would guide them through many more trials on their quest to return to Ithaca.